I've spent the last 4 years carefully curating what I think is one of the best power rack configurations considering footprint, functionality, and of course price. Since this rack contains components from a handful of different companies, primarily Titan Fitness and REP Fitness, I frequently get questions about what this rack is, how I made it, cross-brand compatibility, and why I chose this setup. Today I'm going to walk through my current configuration, as this is my 4th and longest standing home gym power rack, which has now been the centerpiece of my gym for almost 2 years. It was even featured in a recent Garage Gym Reviews video due to my built-in, walk-in dumbbell stand for my REP and Pepin Fast Series dumbbells. I'll go through the details of the rack, the attachments, and some of the things you should consider when building your own or a similar rack. Let's check it out. Hey guys, this is Michael with the Jungle Gym Reviews. Today we're reviewing my personal semi-custom 6-post power rack made primarily from off-the-shelf REP Fitness and Titan Fitness and a couple other manufacturers' parts. This is what I consider to be the most affordable and best bang for buck power rack configuration, especially if you're looking to minimize overall footprint while maximizing overall potential functionality and storage space. Now, just a quick note before I get started, power racks for home gyms are an endlessly complex product category because so much of it comes down to an individual person's space, needs, budget, even geographical location for shipping costs, etc. So this is not a comprehensive power rack option and comparison, but I'm highlighting the select ones I'm using, some of the alternatives, the specs, and why I chose these parts specifically over some of the others. For all the products I'll talk about today, I will link in the description below so you can compare specs and cost for each if you want to build a similar rack or improve any of these ideas for yours at home. Before I get into the video, if you could quickly hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, it will help us continue to grow the channel and make sure you get notified when we post our weekly review videos throughout the end of this year and every single week throughout all of 2025. So at its core, as you can see, this is a 6-post power rack with 3x3 uprights, 1-inch holes, 2-inch upright hole spacing, and 11-gauge steel. And those are all fairly universal industry standard power rack specs, but we'll get into those specifics later. Again, this rack was sourced with different off-the-shelf parts from different manufacturers, which many of them also sell the 5/8 equivalent version of these rack parts as well. Now, the question you may ask is, if space is the main concern, why a 6-post rack? Well, as you can see here, I went with a very compact 6-post rack instead of a more open, longer 4-post one, mainly because I wanted the additional uprights for plate storage and attachment storage, as you can never have too many rack storage options in my opinion. By doing this 6-post configuration, I have 2 extra uprights for the holes, so now I can use 4 total uprights and the additional cross members for storage however I see fit. I personally like having plate storage integrated into the rack as it makes the rack more secure, especially for using things like spotter arms or lever arms. And additionally, since the plate's right next to the barbell, I don't have to go far to rack and unrack the weights, and then I eliminate the need for a plate tree elsewhere, taking up floor space wherever that would be. So the uprights for this rack are the Titan Fitness Titan Series 100-inch uprights. I chose these over other brands for a handful of reasons. Number 1, you can order these a la carte, meaning the uprights ordered by themselves without paying for an entire rack, including the cross members, safeties, pull-up bars, J-cups, etc. Just know you can't do this directly from their website. You'll have to use their chat or email function to talk to a real-life person directly for a quote and placing the individual item order. Reason number 2 is because I'm 6'2". When I purchased this, Titan had the cheapest upright per equivalent height of every major manufacturer. This one again being the 100-inch version. At that time, Bells of Steel hadn't come out with their 3x3 1-inch rack version, the Manicore, which now they have a 108-inch height option that you can buy a la carte as well. Otherwise, I probably would have opted for that, dependent on direct price comparison, if it would be the tallest version that I could buy for the cheapest price shipped to me here in Michigan. Number 3, I went with the Titan rack because I wanted the keyhole side holes for the uprights, which means you can use 1-inch attachments or the 5/8-inch attachments in the same hole slot. The 1-inch ones will sit on top, and the 5/8 ones sit in the bottom, narrower part of the keyhole slot, so it adds more versatility than simply the 1-inch hole options by themselves. For the cross members, I chose the REP Fitness PR-5000 16-inch cross members. These REP ones were the shortest non-custom option I could buy, and these also can be ordered on their own from REP outside of any full rack package. In my opinion, a 16-inch cross member is the best step for people really looking to save on that overall footprint and space, as long as you don't mind lifting from the front post / outside of the rack rather than the inside. Because the front to back spacing between the uprights is so narrow, you have to do your barbell lifts on those front posts using spotter arms rather than on the inside of rack with some form of rack safeties, especially when it comes to squatting, but I'm sure there are some people that make it work. The 16-inch depth is also great because it gives you enough space that when you put plates on the middle uprights, it will not interfere with hitting the plates loaded on the bar on the fronts in any scenario, and even has a couple inches to spare. This way then, your entire front to back depth for a 3x3 6-post rack is only 41 inches overall, which is packing a ton of punch in an overall relatively small footprint. Speaking of that footprint, that overall footprint is 41 inches deep by 48 inches wide before the attachments. With the integrated weight stack lat pull down on here, more details on that in a second, it adds a few more inches to the depth, making it 50 inches deep total since it extends past the rear upright by about 9 inches. As I mentioned, this rack has Titan uprights, REP Crossmembers, and I also have added to this that Selectorized REP PR-5000 200-pound lat pull down and low row attachment with the rear base stabilizer crossmember that it's needed to attach to the rack. I may do a review on that in the future. It's been around for a while, but let's just say for now it's very smooth. You can attach bands to it for more dynamic resistance profile, and while the low row placement doesn't feel the best compared to a commercial machine, it feels 90% of the way there and it gets the job done, and I highly recommend it for a singular center mounted Selectorized low and high pulley option. Now, one thing you may ask is also why I chose the center mounted stack over a side mounted option, and the answer is simple. I had friends work out with me for a majority of the last few years, so I kept a dual-sided Selectorized functional trainer separate from the rack so that I could have 2 people using the rack and the trainer separately for different exercises. Now that it's just me most of these days, I would actually operate dual-sided Selectorized functional trainer stack option rather than this singular center-mounted option. I'll be reviewing some options like that in the next couple months, so stay tuned for those. One other thing I wanted to mention is on the topic of integrated weight stacks is that for this PR-5000 lat pull down and low row attachment, again, it does extend past the end of the rack by 8.5 inches. Some people, like Basement Branded even in a video a few years ago, will turn the RBS around to save some of that depth, but then you lose the ability to incline bench off the front posts because now the curved portion of the RBS would be moving into your active lifting space, or at least bench space for sure. But I did want to mention this is an option in case the extra 9 inches or so made a difference for someone and they were willing to lose the ability to incline barbell press. Speaking to the whip and lateral cross members, reps are 41 inches wide, including the rear base stabilizer for the lat and low row. I had a 6-post, 80-inch PR-5000 built in my basement gym a few years back, and the 41-inch width of the rep rack was actually too narrow for me with long and lanky arms, so when I was wide grip benching, my elbows would graze the outside of the rack or my safeties. So in this case, I now have the 42-inch Titan cross members at the back, middle of my rack and top of my rack, and so I added a few washers to bridge the gap for that rep rear base stabilizer. For my front cross member, I used to have a single 1.25-inch pull-up bar on the front, but recently swapped to the adjustable Titan Fitness rack-mounted pull-up bar, which I'll be releasing a review on next month. So now that you know some washers can make this side-to-side version compatible between Rep and Titan, I then also had to consider whether the 93-inch height of the PR-5000 lat and low row attachment would align with the 100-inch upright holes of the Titan series uprights. These are both metric racks, meaning that although they're listed as being 3x3 with 1-inch holes and 2-inch upright spacing, they're actually using metric equivalencies of those imperial dimensions, so they're really 75 by 75 millimeters with a 25 millimeter hole size, or 2.95 by 2.95 inches with a 0.98 hole size and 50 millimeter or 1.98 spacing along the uprights. That was a bunch of numbers you don't really need to know or remember. Just know that this means these two manufacturers have the same upright hole size and spacing, so you can seamlessly use attachments between the two. And in this case, the entire drop-in lat pull-down low row attachment from Rep went perfectly to the Titan uprights, just as I expected. Now, the most unique feature I am most proud of in this rack is that semi-DIY built-in walk-in rack-mounted dumbbell stand for my Rep and Pepin Fast Series dumbbells. I've actually used this for the original Pepin Fast Series dumbbells, the Made in Canada version, so this is something I've used for the whole life of the rack and not just recently when the Rep version came out. What this dumbbell rack is made of is a set of Crandall Fitness dumbbell spotters mounted to an extra Titan cross member I simply just cut in half. Those Titan in half posts are mounted vertically to a set of Rep PR-5000 16-inch cross members horizontally connected to the main uprights of the rack. I'll link a YouTube Shorts video that I made a few months back that shows this up close as well. I will also try to get some good footage for you here, but this semi-DIY stand is my way I came up with to get these Crandall Fitness dumbbell spotters pushed inside the rack and able to sit at whatever height and side-to-side spacing I choose, so I can just walk in, slightly bend down to grab the dumbbells, and then just stand up, walk out, and begin to use them. I've had this dumbbell set up over a year and dialed in the positioning so that it doesn't get in the way of lat pull-downs, doesn't get in the way of incline benching or other movements, and it is the perfect height for me to be able to rack and unrack the dumbbells regardless of how heavy they are. One thing to note about this setup is that the Crandall Fitness dumbbell spotters only come with a 5/8 inch mounting hole, so you'll need to get a set of 5/8 to 1 inch adapters if you have a 1 inch hole rack. So again, since this is a 6-post power rack, I wanted to have plate storage, but because I'm limited on the side-to-side space here in my single-car garage gym, and I don't have bumper plates, I opted for short weight horns. I bought 2 of the REP Fitness PR-5000 weight horn storage sets, so then I had 6 pairs of 6-inch horns and 6 pairs of 12-inch horns, and since I really only wanted the 6-inch ones to begin with, I sold all the long ones, leaving me with 6 short weight horns per side, so I can store my 2.5, 5, 10, 25, useless 35, and 45-pound plates. For barbell storage, I originally went with the separate vertical 9-bar holder that I just shoved in the corner of the room because I had a bunch of bars at that time, especially a Rogue Kabuki transformer bar in rotation. Now that I've slimmed down to just a handful of bars, I can store them on the rack comfortably. For the rack-mounted barbell storage, there are basically 2 options, either vertical storage like I have here or horizontal storage like the Darko lifting barbell anchor. I actually really love the idea of freeing up the sides of your rack by using the barbell anchor, but again, since I have side-to-side space restrictions here, I had to opt for the vertical storage in my rack. Ironically, I would assume most people have the opposite problem, so I think many people opt for the barbell anchor or similar equivalents to store the bar safely above your head and out of the way. So I have 4 vertical bar holders, but only 3 currently mounted on the rack. 1 pair mounted to the crossmembers and 1 pair mounted to the uprights. Just know they do make different versions depending if you want to mount them to the uprights or the crossmembers, and I'll link both below. I chose these Titan ones mainly again due to the price compared to others and the fact they could be spaced pretty much anywhere so you can customize the positioning, especially with my Bells of Steel SS4 safety squat bar needing more room than my Bare Steel Equipment barbells. Full reviews on all of those bars also coming soon. These Titan barbell holders here also feature plastic inserts so they don't scratch your bar, but I did have to purchase a set of AbMat barbell pillows to put at the bottom of the holders tubing to protect the ends of the bar. I don't know why they don't just add plastic also at the bottom like they did on the sides for the Titan attachments because it's just metal plating there. So just know the plastic inner tubing the barbell holders protects the side sleeves and you have to get something like an AbMat pillow or similar to protect the ends. So now I can't go into detail for all the goodies and attachments I've ever had on here, and for the sake of this review, I've removed a lot of them so it looks a little more bare so I can really highlight the core components of this rack. I did, however, want to mention 2 of the staples that I think people should have for their rack, especially if you need to do barbell work outside the rack, as is the case here for me in this compact 6-post configuration. The spotter arms I chose for this rack are the low-profile surplus strength cell spotters. These were ordered as part of their first batch early in 2023, and I've enjoyed using them since. The biggest features of these is the fact they are low profile, so they don't take up much space, common theme here, and they fit both metric and imperial 3x3 racks due to their rear universal locking slot. They also have 1-inch holes along the entire side, meaning you can add attachments as desired. In my case, because they're low profile, I store them vertically on my lower interior cross members, and by doing so, I can actually now use these attachment holes on the side to attach leg rollers for lat pull-downs. I can then move the leg rollers and spotters front to back or up and down to get the positioning for my leg rollers dialed in perfectly to my needs. I've used these spotter arms attached to some lever arms to create a more even plate-loaded resistance curve. I currently use these attached to my Darko lifting thresher pad to do chest-supported rows. And obviously, besides being extremely functional spotter arms to save you from death during glory days PR attempts, you can mount these anywhere with any orientation to any 3x3 rack with 1-inch holes, so I highly recommend them. The other main attachment I think everyone should have is a landmine. I've had a few others over the years, but the last year and a half I've been using the Clava-built Adroit 2.0. It's basically a 360-degree ball-bearing landmine attachment with a threaded rack attachment bolt so you can quickly mount it and tighten it to any 5/8 or 1-inch hole rack. This way you're not limited to the Landmine motion axes and you can use it however you creatively want. For me, that's primarily just the simple barbell rows, belt squats, standing Viking shoulder press, etc. But the other cool thing about this Landmine attachment is that it's a permanently built-in polycarbonate plastic sleeve, so your barbell doesn't get scratched up taking it in or out or during use. The other main consideration with this rack is that I wanted compatibility with all major OEM and aftermarket attachments, hence the selection of a 3x3 rack with 1-inch holes over a 5/8 inch hole equivalent rack. Some of the attachments that have been on this rack over the years are fully loaded lever arms, including the Titan series lever arms with Vendetta strength trolley adapters and a Kaizen gym pin swivel adapters. I've recently had dialed motion dual ibex cable systems with lat pull down and belt squat. I currently have dual rogue leg rollers again for those lat pull downs, lever arm hacks, and of course different types of squats, foot holder for sit-ups, etc. You may have seen my previous review on the Bolt Fitness Storm Series lateral raise attachment for a machine-like rack-mounted version of a chest and shoulder fly. I've also had Newton Metals handles, JD Gym equipped handles for anything and everything from those lever arms to pull-ups, dips, etc. Coming soon, I will have in here for review a Smith machine attachment for 3x3 racks and even a pendulum squat attachment for the rack. Again, the beauty of these 3x3 racks is that you can just build them out over time with storage and accessories to be as simple or beautifully complicated as you want them to be. So I think it goes without saying with everything I've mentioned until now, but I will spell it out here for you. This rack is extremely functional and I have no regrets other than I had 4 more of these so I could have more attachments and more things to do. But in this small space, I really just needed it to be as relatively small of a footprint as possible while maximizing the storage options and overall functionality for the most reasonably minimal price. You can incline bench on this rack with 0 problems. I've tried on 4 separate benches now, REP 5000 Zero Gap, Rogue Adjustable Bench 3.0, X-Mark Black Diamond, and a Kepi Weight Bench 5000, and a couple of those are really long benches with still plenty of room to spare. I can successfully do full range of motion, strict pull-ups without my feet hitting the ground at 6'2". I don't need any sort of front feet extensions for stability, even while using fully loaded lever arms due to the 200-pound weight stack in the back and the weight plate storage on the sides holding this thing down. My dumbbell storage also doesn't get in the way of any of the other rack functions. The lat pull down is more than tall enough for full extensions, and the low roll foot plate can move really far front to back to accommodate taller users, arm lengths, or desired range of motion. The 42-inch interior width of the rack is great for me, the height of the rack is great for me, and the only thing I need to be considerate of is using attachments that rely specifically on the same rack width. Going from a 41-inch REP rear base stabilizer to a Titan 42-inch width rack is pretty easy with a handful of washers, but if you wanted to jump from 41 to 43 like a Rogue rack, they may take some additional hardware, although it's really possible and not difficult in the grand scheme of things. So guys, that's it for this review and close-up look at what I consider the ultimate functional budget 6-post small profile 3x3 rack build. As always, if you have any questions, please comment down below and I'll be happy to answer or at least try. Thank you for tuning in to the Jungle Gym Reviews. We'll see you next time. Take it easy. Peace.